I was questioning everything. Like, what was the point of that? Was it worth it? Was the money worth the sickness? Was the stress worth it?
Trudy Marie Williams began her career in the 1980s as one of the few women in artificial intelligence. After decades in tech and corporate leadership, burnout forced her to confront the truth. Her mind was brilliant, but her soul was starving. That's when she met her higher self, White Star. What were you feeling in your body? What were you noticing? And you knew that something had to change.
It actually wasn't courageous or brave. It's the usual thing that the biggest motivation for humans is pain. I went traveling and it didn't clear, so that ended up on the path of healing. That was my higher self always guiding me, and I just didn't realize it was there. The illness wasn't healing, and even though I was going for healing of the illness, I soon realized that the illness was part of my journey and it was part of what I had to learn.
End up in a lot of pain and realizing like, oh yeah, this isn't actually where I belong. And sometimes, it takes that to get to where we're really meant to be and when your higher self stepped in.
If everybody has even just a tiny bit of what I've seen that White Star has shown me, then we are operating as humanity at, say, I'd be lucky if it's 20% of our capability. The thing that fuels our essence, our sort of creative energy, is purpose.
Hi, and welcome to Radical TV. I'm Shawna Smith. Joining me now is Trudy Marie Williams. Hello, Trudy. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Nice to meet you.
Wonderful. I'm going to chat a little bit about you here with your bio. Trudy started in IT and AI in the late 1980s, one of 10 women in a 100 men scenario. She went on to be the founder of Tech Startup, and here she experienced complicated leadership personalities and learned a hard lesson about not valuing her ideas and her impact. This whole experience burnt her out and became a catalyst to a transformative journey where she discovered her higher self, White Star. In 2020, she decided to let White Star lead the next phase of her life. This is where she learned how to channel the higher self as a work and life guide, allowing her to navigate the unknown gracefully. Trudy, this sounds so incredibly brilliant. First of all, tell us a little bit how you were in the corporate world, working with a lot of men. You found yourself burnt out, and you had the courage, the bravery to get out and start what you are doing now. Tell us about that.
I wasn't intended, so it actually wasn't courageous or brave. It's the usual thing that the biggest motivation for humans is pain and having burnout and not having any energy and wondering if because Emmy feels sometimes like you're paralyzed and you're dying, and going through all of that kind of made you sort of stop and go, oh, what have I achieved? What have I actually done in life? And whilst you're young and you're aiming for your goals of your career, I've just sold a company. Technically, my parents, who are from the Welsh Valleys, they used to laugh and say my salary was like a telephone number, and they were seeing this as a huge achievement. And yet on the point where I'm burnt out, I was questioning everything. Like, what was the point of that? Was it worth it? Was the money worth the sickness? Was the stress worth it? So I went through quite a few cycles of panic, and then it didn't clear. I went traveling and it didn't clear. So that ended up on the path of healing, which takes you into the energy modalities and the spiritual modalities. And even though I didn't quite fit in there, I soon found that I had my own version of it, but it took a few years for me to connect to that. And it kind of just unfolded. That's the magic, I think, of what happened to me. Was all of my life, I never planned anything. I ended up just in the right place at the right time. And I look back now and think that was my higher self always guiding me, and I just didn't realize it was there.
And that's what you do now is transformative coaching, right?
That's right. So I help high achievers step into their higher self and to meet their higher self.
It's so sad that we end up, like you said, we think we have to have it this way. We end up, for you, myself as well, end up in a lot of pain and realizing like, oh yeah, this isn't actually where I belong. And sometimes, it takes that to get to where were really meant to be and when your higher self stepped in. What were you feeling in your body? What were you noticing? And you knew that something had to change.
Well, the illness wasn't healing. And even though I was going for healing of the illness, I soon realized that the illness was part of my journey and it was part of what I had to learn. And that's tough for us people to become more self-loving and more forgiving of the situation, and instead to allow the condition to carry you through life. And as I was doing that, I never intended for it to turn into work. So we call that our spiritual apprenticeship. That was the time when I was learning what worked for me, what didn't work. But each turn of the corner was, to heal, you need to do this. To heal, you need to do that. But the things that I was being shown were actually, you need to go on an acting class. You need to be seen more. You need to not hide behind the scenes like you did in the last company. So it was kind of leading me out of my limitations that had caused the failure, or at least the burnout for me in the previous organization.
Take us through what you do now. Your Quantum Human Metamorphosis is your unique method. Tell us how that works and what you all do with it.
So what I discovered when I was doing this work was that I was getting information that I would call from the future. And I think that's how I ended up doing AI in the 80s, from a girl in the valleys that girls didn't do computing, let alone the girls from the valleys from my parents who were miners and caretakers. So that kind of path didn't make sense, but to me it seemed perfectly normal. And it was only like last month that I could sit down and finally say to my mum what my degree was in. I even won a Welsh Development Award for my project in artificial intelligence. And my mum came and I was in the newspaper. That's how old this was. I was in the newspaper, but she never really understood. And it was only last month I could finally tell her, Mum, you know, all this AI you're seeing now, that's what I was studying. And now she gets it. So in a way, my past and my future kind of clashed, or my past and my present clashed at that point. And I was like, this is really weird. Does that mean then in, say, 20 years' time, everybody will understand the higher self? Will they understand what this means? So what I started seeing in a vision was this amazing group of leaders floating in a ballroom. They looked very elegant, they looked really abundant, but more importantly, they looked peaceful. That's the floating bit. And when I asked what this was, they told me it was the Quantum Humans, or at least that's the name we agreed on to describe these people. And I could see that they were very business oriented. They were sharing ideas. They were supporting each other. They were funding each other's projects. They were very heart led, and they were connected to something much bigger than we normally connect to as humans. And I called them the Quantum Humans because I just couldn't find any name that described this kind of relationship with people. And over time, and it is only this year that I finally realized that I needed to work more with the higher achievers and those that are entrepreneurial minded, because entrepreneurial minded is different to being an entrepreneur, to help them understand that we've been educated all our lives to go off what we learned at school, what knowledge we'd acquired, when actually we needed now to learn who we are and what skills we had on a much more subtle level for the future. So it kind of all unfolded. It wasn't a plan. I didn't sit down and think, this is what I'm going to do. I just said to my higher self, which showed up as White Star. Actually, it's Sarah and Wen because it's a Welsh word, but I translated it to English for people. And that's just seemed to guide me to the point that now, like 2021 was when I did my first Discover Your Great Vision course. But it's only now that AI has taken off to the extent it has that I can understand what I did in 21 was the foundations of my metamorphosis process that I do now. So it's just this unfolding, the things naturally unfold, leading me to the point that I'm at now. So I just feel now it's time for that to be shared with other people now. So the metamorphosis, rather than transformation, is because imagine the caterpillar and butterfly. That's the best analogy for this. Imagine you're a caterpillar and you've been living your whole life as a high achiever caterpillar. You've climbed the trees, but you've done it one tiny step at a time as you've climbed to the top branches. And you're mastering skills to climb trees the caterpillars never had. And you've got to the top of your trees and you've managed and you've succeeded, but it's exhausting. Well, what if you changed your operating system and became the butterfly? You could get to the treetops much, much quicker. But not only that, you could fly to so many different treetops and achieve so much more with a lot less energy. So that's the kind of analogy of where I was when I was the tech startup and all the issues I was suffering then. I was people-pleasing and perfectionist and self-doubt and inner critic. All those issues that high achievers suffer from were all happening then. And what I've learned over the years in between now to this point is how once I connect to my higher self, a lot of those things dissolve naturally, because as a butterfly, I can do the things I was always meant to do. So it's kind of like we're all ahead of our time, trying to do things that butterflies ought to be doing, but we've been doing them as caterpillars.
Mm-hmm.
So my metamorphosis is that shift from being caterpillar to the butterfly, which is not easy because there's a bit of goo in between. We have to go through the gooey bit. And I've been through the gooey bit. My chrysalis is the ME chronic fatigue that I suffer.
And you have a system in it. You call them activations, correct? Can you take us through that?
Yeah, so there's 12 activations that I take people through. And these were, I can imagine like suffering from, I joke and I say that my tech startup was The Office that you see on TV. I don't find The Office funny. I lived some of those experiences in real life. It was pretty horrendous. Like there was days where I thought I was perhaps in some sort of big joke because I couldn't get it. But the whole point is that during that time, there were situations and things that I couldn't handle or manage as the caterpillar. And now I've created modules to help me. So the first one is the personality, where a lot of our fears come out of the personality. So M is for mindfulness and ego reprogramming. So we have to break down the personality, which is just a bodyguard. We sometimes put too much focus on it. Mm-hmm. But I also added into that module self-branding, because we all have to be our own brand in the modern day. So by adding that into the ego reprogramming, it just brings the high achiever and the spiritual reprogramming or the psychological reprogramming of the ego at the same time. The second step then is embodiment. We're also stressed these days. Our nervous systems are wired to fight and flight. We're not present. But equally, we don't value ourselves for just being who we are. I do an exercise with people and I say, okay, who are you without your job title? And people can freak out when they think of, who am I without my job title? And that's just the very tip of what I do. So being comfortable with more than that. So that's the E for embodiment. Then we have the truthful communication. So this is about learning to speak your soul aspirations instead of your personality needs and wants from fear, to start learning how to be more authentic, to speak your truth, to speak your boundaries, and even to learn, because when we deal with the higher self, it's symbolic. It's more abstract. It's a different language. The English language was created for trade, not for communication. So we have to learn a different way of expressing that part of us. And art and poetry and things are all really good at this already, but they don't have the high achiever side. So again, it's bringing that together into how we communicate. Then we have A for autonomous energetic boundaries. And this is where we start learning how to manage our energy system so that when we're overreacting to somebody's comments because of what they've said, we can sense into the bigger picture of the energy behind it. When we're having experiences, how we can change the experiences by altering our energy. We can then bring a different frequency to the room and completely change a room. So we learn that kind of information about the energetic system. So that's the autonomous sort of taking control of your own energy and also your emotions. Then we go into M for the magnetic leadership. And this is where we start learning to be leaders of our own life, because you can't lead other people unless you can lead yourself. It's where we also look at becoming the CEO or the entrepreneur leader. So we look at the different types of leaders and we play with those. And each year we have a slightly different theme, so it changes each year. Then we've got omnipotent. Is that how you Americans say it? I'm not sure.
Yeah,
but
omnipotent.
Okay. I had to change it from how I would have wanted to say it. And this is the bit where we find out about our higher self, how it works, how we connect to it. And I have a technique that you don't have to meditate for hours to connect to it. I've found a very easy way to ask questions of it and get instantaneous downloads and information about what's right for your business, what's right for you, what people to have around you. And it's called quantum testing, but it's based off kinesiology, and your body just gives you answers before you even ask questions. Mm-hmm. And people find this so peaceful. It takes all the kind of confusion out of life. Mm-hmm. Then I have R for resolute decision making. So imagine you've got this body testing now and you've got a decision to make and your fear of missing out, or you're wondering what is the right answer or the wrong answer, and you're worrying about the after effects. This removes all of that because you know that it's all part of some greater divine plan, that each thing you say yes to is a soul lesson that you'll grow into. And that, even though it might sound like it's completely off course for what you think you should be doing, it will help you step into the skill set you need when you get back on course. So that's the decision-making aspect. And I like to play here because we do a thing with judges. We say, who is the judge of your decision-making? And sometimes we find mum and dad are.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Just to give you an idea. So I'm always looking for shadows and the broken parts of the architecture that we work with so that we can highlight it, so we can change it. So then we have pain alchemy. And this is where we learn to transmute our trauma and our pain. So this is the kind of the module that really represents metamorphosis and how we go through pain and turn it into our greatest awareness. So this is kind of where we learn to make our mess our message. Then we've got H for higher consciousness and great vision. And this is where I take you to like other planets or other constructs to break away from the norm, to really expand your mind into possibilities for solutions for what you're here to do. So this is looking beyond your job. It looks at your childhood. It looks back at things you enjoy doing and puts them together as jigsaw pieces into a completely new vision for you. Because in the future, I don't see there's job titles. And I think we all have to find a new way of describing ourselves, of selling ourselves, of offering ourselves for work. And the great vision to me relates to the Michelangelo of the Renaissance period, you know, that multi-talented polymath, but being able to pull themselves together, which is why I like the radical magic stuff, because that's what they're on about too. So that fits in there nicely. And then we have overcoming fear of taking action, where we make things too much like hard work and we learn how to step into a more easy flowing, natural way of achieving things rather than the hard way. So I call that the unicorn way rather than the mountain goat. And then we have the S for trailblazing, the S for stepping into being a trailblazer. And this is where I ask you to be really ridiculous and to go to the future, find a problem that the world is having, and find out how your great vision fits in, what big problem you're here to solve. And these are wicked problems. That's a design theory where we find a problem because it's complex, because it's interrelated. There's no one single answer. It's a complex issue. So like poverty would be a wicked problem. Because I think if we can learn to master these, that's where AI can't work at the moment. Mm-hmm. And that's how we differentiate our abilities over AI. We can use AI to gather all the knowledge. We can then use our higher self to connect to higher consciousness. And then we can connect to a wicked problem. And then we start building our own infrastructure, which is stronger for selling to the marketplace to get different types of work. And then finally, we end on the last two letters, where we do a life review of what we've done over the last year. How much was our personality fear in charge versus our new higher self, this awakening? And then we start with a new set of goals, which I call the mythic architecture, where we look at what rules that we've been applying in our lives. Like, do we believe in the law of attraction? Do we believe in co-creation? Do we believe that we are the leaders of our own lives? And by looking at these, you can find the kind of rules that we've been limiting ourselves with that have been keeping us as the caterpillar. And then we start the next cycle. And it's the journey is the objective as opposed to any particular end point. So we find that each year I'm learning, each year I'm still learning. I'm still acquiring new information as I go through. And then I add it into the next module for the following year. So that was a long answer.
Is there a specific timeline that you follow or not with your plan?
It's once a month. And the only timeline I use is the moon, believe it or not, because the moon brings up the shadow side of us. It brings up our blind spots. It brings up our lies. A new word I've learned recently, confabulations. It highlights our confabulations, the lies we tell ourselves honestly. So that's why we do it monthly. But anybody can start at any point in the journey, because I think sometimes the soul calls when it calls, and sometimes there's one thing that will start you on the journey. And you might not be attracted to becoming a CEO of your life because you might not be feeling brave enough yet. So then you might find that energetic boundaries might call you more. But once you get started and you get into the flow, then you'll realize that all the modules, when they're put together like a jigsaw, build this really strong superstructure, like an operating system that is preparing you to fly higher as the butterfly.
What can people expect when they start working with you?
Strangeness. Because I use White Star, I can see people's reality, and sometimes people don't like that. So I have to be gentle bringing that up. I listen to their stories and their narratives of why they haven't done, what they're struggling with. And then as I get to know them better, I can start revealing what I'm seeing. because I'm not a guru, I'm not a teacher. What I do is I imagine my classes as experiments, and we are alchemists. I bring all the information to the table. You pick out the pieces you want to work on that month, and then you work with them. And then I'll try and create as many modules that will help. We've got some already, but as people come up with new ideas, then I'll create the modules to give experiential experiences for people to play with and see what they learn from that. Because the one thing I've learned through this process is I'm not teaching them how to be me or how to be my white star. I want them to find their own unique thing that they're here to do, because these all fit together in the grand scheme of what I call like the divine plan of the universe. And when we all find our own little bit, we're stronger for it. So it's the sum of the parts. And my job is to help you find your unique essence of who you are and your great vision, and then help you learn how to express it, how to talk about it, how to sell it, how to become your brand, how to take action on it, and all the steps that we've just been through. So.
Give us an example of a client, obviously no names or anything, but of a transformation that a client has gone through after working with you.
So one lady thought she was here to be a coach, and she discovered that actually she is here to help people feel belonging. And when she started her coaching, she didn't actually know what topic it was. So that was years ago. But now she's starting to see that her role is more about being a mother. And by experiencing being a mother, she can help other people understand that interrelationship, because she had a bad experience with her mother and how she's healing that. And she's now creating workshops for a belonging feeling for people who either got parents divorcing when they were young or never felt that they were seen and recognized when they came as a child. You know, they were refused and told to be quiet, and that they weren't speaking of things that the family understood. So she's specializing in that. I have another lady who's an artist, but she's turned out to be a brand ambassador for a Caribbean island. And she is able to represent that culture and become, almost through our art, by doing exhibits, she can show her art as being a way to promote the island. So her art has moved into this kind of cultural ambassador role. And, you know, each person's a bit scared when I give them these sort of insights, because it's much bigger than they ever thought. And this is why all the steps are needed to help them get ready to take these big leaps. Another lady is a natural geomancer, and she's been working with the land and like sacred circles, but she doesn't want to be a typical dowser. She wants to be able to see if, so this is where the experimentation trailblazing bit comes in. She wants to see if she can create a sacred circle in your house permanently that fuels your energy and your creative projects the same ways you feel when you go to something like Stonehenge. So we're all experimenting with frequencies and feelings and spaces, and how we can encourage people to be braver and bolder and more creative. So I see us all kind of working together to build what I call the quantum human.
What would you say is the biggest lie that your target audience has been told that you have about your industry or topic that you found is completely false?
So it's to do with a high achiever. We're all reasonably happy to call ourselves high achievers. But what I've discovered is that the high achiever really is a syndrome in its own right. We blame perfectionism, self-doubt, the imposter syndrome, the people-pleasing, and all these other things, but they're just the tip of the iceberg. Because the high achiever is somebody that is trying to excel, trying to do the impossible, but often they're doing it through survival skills. I like to think of it that they've fallen into quicksand and they're managing to keep their head above water, and they think this is amazing because they're keeping their head up, how great it is, and all that effort they're using is just treading water effectively. And if we can take them out of that and show them that high achieving is that syndrome that they've been doing, and actually there's a more easy flowing way to have impact without it having to be through the high achiever method, then they are able to use all that energy they've used keeping themselves afloat in the quicksand to actually go and serve other people in the world. And this doesn't have to be big. I notice small things have big ripples, little things have big ripples. It really doesn't matter the size of what you think you're doing, and that's another kind of issue with consciousness. They just have to get on and do it. But if we can get them out of the quicksand, we can then show them how to redirect all that energy that they've been using as survival skills in the right direction, that they feel more fulfilled and lit up. And the key to that is the higher self. I think that a lot of high achievers become high achievers because they were rejected as kids. They didn't have their higher self recognized. Their creativity was stamped on. Their emotions were told to put them back in the box. And because of all of this, they closed down the gateway to their higher self. And if we can plug the higher self back in, then all those issues suddenly have a completely different base to stand on, and everything starts changing.
And what's the real cost when people are living inside that lie?
Me. Chronic fatigue. I got that.
You felt it.
I lived it.
Yeah. I mean, I get it. And I feel like it's a huge part of our society
Culture.
that, I mean, it's a large percentage.
It is. And I think, we joke and say ME, but it's also this, like the first time I started working with my ME, I thought, oh, I'm doing too much. Then I thought, oh, well, now I'm not doing too much, but I still have ME. What's the next issue? And I was going through these different topics, knocking them off. I thought, okay, maybe it's because I don't look after my body enough, so I looked after my body more. But ultimately, it's purpose. The thing that fuels our essence, our sort of creative energy is purpose. And we're all being told that the purpose we're here for is a job title at the end of a degree with hundreds of hours of a particular subject that even at the end of a degree you might not even enjoy, but you've committed now, you've invested now, you have to carry on with it. And now with AI, education is shifting. Even the things you learned that you thought were clever, the information you thought was uniquely yours to sell, AI can just check it out in a couple of prompts. So, we've been broken now. The high achievers are like, oh my God. So all the things I mastered, the methodologies, the techniques that made me, have the edge, they don't exist anymore. So now you have to find what is your edge.
Yeah.
And it's this being adaptable, flexible, being able to critical think, symbology more than information. And they're saying we're coming out of the information age now, but we're going into the creativity era. And creativity is symbolic. And high achievers are not set up for that kind of abstract walking in the unknown. They need plans. They must be here at this age, must be there by then, learn this, learn that, do this, do this. And now we're asking them to say, throw it all away and float. Get on a unicorn and ride off into the sunset with champagne in your hands. It's doable.
When did you realize that your personal transformation was going to be your mission to help others?
So in between, after the selling my company, I wanted to dance. So I wanted to learn salsa. So I'd started dancing. I learned a dance called Kizomba. So I'd been kind of learning these partner dances, which is a whole other level of embodiment and give and receive and energies. It was amazing to learn. And I was stuck in traffic driving to my class in London, which is for me, it's a 2-hour drive on a good day or 4 hours on a bad traffic day. And a voice in my head started and told me I needed to mix my dance classes with all the things I've been learning on my healing journey. And I thought, oh, it's weird. I must be bored. And I just kept ignoring the voice. And the voice got louder and louder. And literally it spoke to me for about 3 hours. And I say spoke to me because the higher self feels like me. It's not like it's some external voice. It feels like me, but it's much, much bolder than me. And it was telling me what to do. And it wouldn't shut up. So I said, okay, I'll do it. And that was the start of that was literally autumn 2019. It also told me in 2019 that 2020 was going to be hell. It was going to be really bad. All the world was going to fall apart. And I just laughed and said, oh, don't be so stupid. And I didn't write anything about it. Then, of course, March 2020, I sat down. I thought, okay, there's more to this voice than I thought.
Wow.
I need to take this seriously. And that's when I started then taking it seriously.
Wow. And who specifically do you call to serve? Men, women, all ages, or is there a specific, who do you love to work with exactly?
Anybody that's willing to be creative, to become their own alchemist, that wants to shake the world up and bring really radically new, exciting, experiential things to the world. So that it could be men, it could be women, it could be any age, really.
And is there anything about your industry that breaks your heart currently that you're witnessing?
It's the number of hours that leaders are working, and I'm sure they feel like I did when I was in projects. I was doing data migration projects, which were one of the notorious running late, overworking, lots of hours to catch up type projects. And I would project manage them to within 10% of what they needed to be to try and rescue people from having to give up on the birthdays, from the family time, from having to go home and be so exhausted and then go back and do another 10, 15-hour day. So I would always try and help out by doing the plans more accurately. But they don't know, like the industry doesn't have people like that. Everything now is about speed, money, savings, and the cost is our humanity and our creativity. And to me, I think it's such a short-sighted view to treat your workforce this way. If everybody has even just a tiny bit of what I've seen that White Star has shown me, then we are operating as humanity at, say, I'd be lucky if it's 20% of our capability.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a huge loss, given all the problems we're trying to solve and the things we're trying to fix.
Mm-hmm.
And some of that is because we're forcing people into the wrong routines and the wrong way to do things. If we came up with more flexibility, like, we all know now about neurodivergence, but we're making space for that. But there are many other ways beyond the ones that we know that people need to be creative to find that one solution that will change the trajectory of how we all experience Earth. And as such a beautiful planet for us to come and experience, I think it's such a shame that half of us don't see it because we're heads down, trying to pay the mortgage, trying to get to work, trying to rush the kids to school. And we've just become a society of checklists. And then we get a holiday where we try to be ourselves and then it's back to checklists again. And I think that's my biggest concern, I think, for humanity, not just leaders, but leaders impacted and are more impacted by it. But that's where I sort of really feel it. And again, you can imagine how that fits into my work and my burnout. I was lucky I had money to suffer the burnout and not have to try and work through it. But not everybody has that ability.
Yeah, you could go dance, right?
Mm-hmm.
What would the world look like if everybody knew what you know?
There would be no competition. There would be a lot of collaboration and excitement. Everybody would be glowing because when you do this kind of work, it's not about removing the problems. It's about finding tools to navigate the problems in a way that lights you up. And being sad is an alchemical process in itself. We have to sometimes dissolve, release, let go, detach in order to bring something new. And it's learning how to be these processes in the best way that you can, and the emotional regulation. So those things still exist, but it's almost like this vision's a bit weird, but the vision I was shown was in a nebula on TV, came on TV, like just a normal galaxy kind of movie. And I just started sobbing, not because of what I saw, but what I felt. There was this intense feeling of peace, love, and understanding. And that's, at first I thought it was torturing me. I thought, why are you showing me this? This is so far from my experience. Why are you showing me this? Now I see that was what I'm meant to bring for other people. So that's how I see the future. So I always get upset when I talk about
it. Oh, I would love to see like your work in the schools. I would love to see it start there or even sooner. Definitely. I don't know.
No, I'm great with kids.
I bet you are. Yeah.
When I met a child the other day, she asked me what I did, and I said I speak to fairies. I said, her face lit up. And the parents kind of looked at me disapprovingly. I'm like, well, she probably does too. Might as well acknowledge that adults do too, so she doesn't ever shut that creative part of her mind down.
Yeah.
So I'm all for that. And I think right now kids are really struggling to know what's true and what's not true, especially with social media and artificial intelligence, the deep fakes and all that stuff. So I think my quantum testing technique, I'd love to get that into schools so the kids can start navigating and learning to trust their own inner guidance.
Yeah, I've really been working on that with my own children and allowing them to say what they need to me. I think that's huge. When someone goes through your complete method, you've talked about a few clients already and what they've, accomplished. Is there a time frame typically? Does it kind of just ebb and flow? And also, what is possible for someone who fully commits to your approach?
I think, like, first I thought after 9, I do like a 1-to-1 lightning path as well. And I thought after 9 sessions of this lightning path, people do see a huge change. But the problem is all I've done is got them to the first stage of being a butterfly. And then they start seeing their vision. And then they start freaking out at the vision. So then we have to go through another layer. So technically, that's why I said it's not really a destination, it's the journey. They use me less and less. They learn all the skills I offer, so they're more independent because I'm really keen on them being able to do this without me. And once they've learned this, and this isn't for them to do for other people, it's just for their own lives management. I call it graceful life management. And once they learn that for themselves, then they only need me for the new stuff that comes along. And then we explore that, we look at how that fits in, and then they go off again and do the next thing. So for me, that's a rapid growth cycle for your life that you wouldn't be able to do just by sitting at home or going back and forth to work and on your normal routine. Even self-help books want to do this because the things that I've discovered are deeper than any self-help book I've looked at. They really ask the questions that nobody really asks. And I guess that's my computer background, that I'm treating this work as a programmer. Like, if this is true, then what else is true? If this is true, then what's it not? So all that logic ability and the way that I analyze data, because data analysis is part of what I am, I can apply to people's experiences, and I can spot commonalities across people. Like, oh yeah, I can see that's similar to this. This might work for this as well. And then we tune it to be specific for them. So we have a kind of leg up, a quick launching pad then onto their journey. But like for one client at the moment, she's not experiencing that because she's just had a baby and I've never had a baby. So I'm learning with her. But even then, for me, it's an amazing experience watching how I am a soul guide. So I brought 2 babies into the world. And during the pregnancy, mum was able to use the quantum testing technique to talk to the baby. So we were all having conversations with the baby. She was telling us all sorts of stories, and we've been speaking with her like about what food she liked, what food she didn't. So when mum was struggling to eat, that's how we navigated it. So, even that's much quicker than what a lot of people would experience. And I don't even have that experience. I just was using her knowledge to help her understand and navigate that better. So it's definitely a more rapid growth cycle. So you have to be ready for change. Like, when I started doing spiritual work, I had a really good teacher who said to me, if you do spiritual work, don't expect to have the same boyfriend, husband, job, friends, anything, because the whole point is change. And changing means everything in your life is up for change. So if you're going to be clinging on to something, you're not going to be changing. So choose now. Are you up for this change or not? And that's really the warning that comes with my metamorphosis. You won't know who you are by the end of each session. So be prepared to change.
When I sit here and talk to you and listen to you speak, I feel like I'm speaking to someone that has come here from the future. I really get that vibe.
I'm glad you say that, because that's how it feels to me. But I always feel a bit awkward sort of saying that. But that's what White Star feels when I won't remember anything I've just said.
Yeah.
I'll have to go back and listen to it because it's usually her speaking through me.
Yeah.
And I understand what she's saying because I'm the one translating it into my known experiences and my logic to help. And I made a joke, like, I'm writing a book at the moment on one of the first modules is this quantum testing. And she literally dropped the high achiever concept on me a month before the book was due. And I joked and said, well, it's lucky you're part of a high achiever, isn't it? Because only a high achiever would be stupid enough to take that information and write a book proposal in 4 weeks. But it just shows the power, because I love this quote that I found recently that I can't remember who said it, but it was saying that power without love is aggressive, and we all know that, but love without power is anemic. So that's the higher self is the love, and the high achiever is the power.
Wow. Can you repeat that again? I've got to hear it again.
Power without love is aggressive, but love without power is anemic.
Wow. Wow, that's powerful. Yeah. And I love too what you said is for people to learn their invisible skills. We all have invisible skills. And like you mentioned earlier, they're buried and hidden. And for you to get in there and see what people have and to help them to find their invisible skills is absolutely incredible.
And the thing is, the easiest, most obvious invisible skill is something you do easily that you don't even value.
Mm.
Something you're natural at, and you don't even realize it. And because you're natural, you don't think it's saleable because you assume everybody else is natural, but it's
Mhm.
not. So I had my own version of that. So I now look for it in other people as well.
Ah, wow. Okay. Well, if people want to get in touch with you, what can they expect when they start working with you directly? I know you said you meet monthly. It revolves around the moon. What can they expect? What else can they expect?
So each session is between 3 and 4 hours. It involves me not creating chaos on purpose, but if we're going to have to live in chaos, I might as well start teaching you how to handle it straight away, right? So I give you a whole bunch of topics that are themed. And then we have workbooks and we have modules, like extra modules that you can play to catch up on, say, if you don't know anything about the higher self, there'll be some information on the higher self. So I curate like a playpen for you each month, and then you choose how much you want to commit to that. But the great thing about combining spiritual wisdom or knowledge with high achievers is that if you know that the mind doesn't know the difference between reality and visualization, you can experience, say, an interview visually. I can lead you on an interview soul journey. And as we're going, when I'm seeing the blocks, I can create energetic shifts ready so that when you hit the real thing, you're already been through it once and you're already aligned to go more successfully through the process.
Mm.
So we play like that in each workshop.
Okay. And how can people connect with you and learn more about you?
So my website is under change at the moment because I'm just altering. It's getting more and more precise. My great vision is getting more and more precise. So basically, my great vision is getting all of you on your great vision. So you're all part of my great vision. And finding the words that connect to people has been a bit of a struggle, which is what I've been working on this year. But my website is trudymarie.co.uk. And I'm on social media. I have 50 episodes where I've been sharing the futuristic downloads that I get on a monthly basis. There's 50 of those already on YouTube that you can access, and that's Trudy Marie Whitestar. I'm also on Facebook and LinkedIn and Instagram, but LinkedIn more for business. I've been trying to reword my content specifically to business problems to try and help people see more easily how this stuff works in business as well. Because I kind of want to see boardrooms where they're planning a project and I take them on a future life exploration to plan the project. I want to see people doing energetic work on each other when they realize that somebody in the group is low in energy and they need to have more momentum on their projects. I want them to be able to trailblaze and to go to the Renaissance and find some ideas that they didn't even know could be applied to the project now. I want people to just expand their consciousness and really step into what I think is the human potential and the bigger purpose of what we're here to do.
Yeah, it's not to come here and put our nose to the grind and go, 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 go and do, do, do. I think you're exactly right. Thank you. What has changed in your business or life since working with the radical company that you did not expect?
So the main thing was Jason understanding what I was trying to do. Because it's hard to get to people that really understand, especially as mine was built up by accident. I know it's not, it's some greater design than I could have, but I didn't know when I started handing over to Whiteside, I didn't know where it was going to go. So my story is a little bit different to everybody else in that I got all this stuff. I got hours and hours of workshops and content, and I just didn't know where to start. And I think it was within the first 10 minutes of speaking to Jason, and he went, "That's it." And that was when he highlighted that my starting point could be people who are frightened of their jobs with AI. And then I suddenly went, "Oh my God, yeah, of course I did that whole the future of work vision where I shared what I saw as the future of work. There were no job titles. I hadn't realized that."
Yeah.
And then it just made everything like connect together so easily that I was able to, like, that's why I've been reworking everything. It's like, oh, now I see the hook that holds it all together. And it's simple to say it's just a hook, but it's also the most profound because sometimes when we're working so close with your work, it's not so obvious what that one hook will do for the whole paradigm shift of the content. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's amazing. And if you're talking to someone that's considering the Radiverse, what would you tell them about your experience?
So the important thing is I'm a data analyst, so anything that you do is collect as much of data that you can bring to the experience. Don't worry so much about the structure of it, that the universe is set up to actually help you make sense of everything. So the more you record, the more you'll have available, and the easier the process will be.
Very good. All right, Trudy, what a joy to chat with you today. Thank you for joining us here on Radical TV.
Thank you for having me.